Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, giving you my Week 15, 2024 NFL predictions. Well, for the Fanatic this past week, it was another good week in terms of predicting games overall. Through the last week of the bye season, through the 13-game stretch, I had another positive winning week. Obviously, the worst pick I had the entire weekend was taking the Bears with their incredibly porous offensive line. Caleb Williams has already been sacked over 50 times. And thinking the Niners with all their injuries and their frustrations, and also I thought with the Bears with a new coach, I thought they might get the new coach boost of, hey, Eberflus is out the building, and maybe they could play well. Boy, was I wrong about that one. The Niners, Isaac Granado had about, 100 scrimmage yards and 3 total touchdowns. Purdy was 20 of 25 for 325 yards. Juwan Jennings, when he's active, seems to be the best receiver for the Niners when Ayuk and Debo aren't doing that well. Kittle had a monster game, and that was my worst pick of the entire week. And honestly, I came out of that game wondering, what did I do, or what did I think that made me think that Kyle Shanahan couldn't outcoach a Bears team, even though I know Caleb Williams now has gone 7 straight games on a 7-game losing streak without throwing an interception. I know he threw for about 132 yards. But besides that being my worst pick, the other couple spread picks, they were just tough back and forth games. Bills-Rams was the game of the weekend, one of the games of the year in terms of just the offensive performance, the firepower, the consistent offensive showing. Josh Allen becoming the first player since Otto Graham, one of the 2 great Northwestern quarterbacks, him and the immortal Trevor Siemian being the other Northwestern quarterback. Having 3 passing and 3 rushing touchdowns, having the highest fantasy point total performance ever in ESPN or in fantasy history. Absolutely bonkers game. Though I have to give the Rams credit, they won a shootout because I thought they had the better receiving talent. If you told me that Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid were in that game, maybe the Bills pull it off, and maybe if they don't give up that, they don't have to use that one timeout on the attempted QB sneak, the Bills might have had a chance to come back in that moment. A couple other spread losses. Had Saints-Giants for a while, but then the Giants decided to have one great drive and made it a 4-point game, or a 3-point game. I needed it to be a 5-point game. That sucked. And then I'm trying to remember the other spread loss I had. It was not Tampa. It wasn't the Minnesota one. I'm trying to remember. It was, talk about the Rams, talk about the Niners. Oh, no, the Packers-Bears, or Packers-Lions, where I missed it by the hook. Tough call there. I thought the Lions had basically had a phenomenal first half. The Packers really kind of put it on at the second half. And then again, it came down to essentially Dan Campbell having the biggest stones, in the NFL, maybe outside of Nick Sirianni. We're going on forward on that 4th down and with Jared Goff falling to get the win. And the Lions now firmly have the number 1 seed. But I do think for the Vikings, they have a huge game, a Super Bowl preview, I believe, in Bills-Lions, but I'll get that in a second. But though overall for the last week of the bye season in the 13 games late, I went 8-5 against the spread, and straight up I went 10-3. That equals 61.5% against the spread, and straight up that is 10-3, which equals 76.9 or 77% straight up. So overall for the year now, through 208 games with only the final 64 games to go, 4 straight 16-game weeks. It's the home stretch for all the prognosticators out there. Overall for the year, this is the best year I've had picking against the spread and straight up. I've markedly improved from previous years past. So this year so far, I am 112, 91-5 against the spread on my spread picks. And straight up now, I am 146-62, which equals 70.2%. It's definitely a new personal best in terms of my predictions through 208 games. If you bet with my predictions, you would be getting a nice little salary of 55%. That's a solid winning percentage. I could go into Vegas this year and make a little bit of money. But also having the perfect week, and straight up 70% is what my, it's been a goal of mine. And to actually now hit this mark with 64 games to go, it's going to be very hard for me next year to try to duplicate the pace I'm on now. And I'm very proud of how I've done this year with my predictions. And I'm glad for all the viewers out there that have watched the entire year as well. But yep, those are my against the spread and straight up records for this week. There are no flexes from what I've seen. I know there's a flex next week for the Bengals. The Browns-Bengals game is not Thursday game anymore. It is Broncos at Chargers, which I think is a much better game. That's in 2 weeks. But let me get into my predictions for this week. 16 games. So on Thursday, when the 7-6 Los Angeles Rams travel to San Francisco to take on the 6-7 San Francisco 49ers in a huge NFC West clash, the San Francisco 49ers are 2.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Rams here, plus 2.5, and the Los Angeles Rams straight up in a slight upset. Then on Sunday, when the 12-1 Kansas City Chiefs go to Cleveland to take on the 3-10 Cleveland Browns, the Kansas City Chiefs are 4-point favorites in this game. Give me Kansas City here -4, and Kansas City straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-7 Cincinnati Bengals travel to Tennessee to take on the 3-10 Tennessee Titans, the Cincinnati Bengals are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Cincinnati here -4.5, and Cincinnati straight up. Then the next game, when the 8-5 Washington Commanders travel to New Orleans to take on the 4-9 New Orleans Saints, the 4-9 or 5, I believe they're, the 8-5 Washington Commanders go to the 5-8 New Orleans Saints. The Washington Commanders are 7.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Washington here -7.5, and Washington straight up. Then the next game, in a rematch of Super Bowl 35, one of the great Super Bowls of all time when the Ravens won, when the 8-5 Baltimore Ravens travel to New York to take on the 2-11 New York Giants. The Baltimore Ravens are 15-point favorites in this game. I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens here straight up, but I'm going to learn my lesson from the last time. A 15-point spread, a 2-score spread, especially of how the Ravens have competed against the Las Vegas Raiders and the Cleveland Browns, two teams that have 2 or 3 wins themselves. I cannot confidently take the Ravens with 15 points in this game. So give me the Ravens here straight up. I feel like if you're doing a straight up pick and pull or with confidence points like I am in the Bridgewater's Finest pool, take Baltimore here with the 16 points. That's easy. But on the spread perspective, take Baltimore here straight up. But I'm going to take the New York Giants plus 15. Then the next game, when the 5-8 Dallas Cowboys go to Carolina to take on the 3-10 Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are 1-point favorites in this game. This is a genuine pick-em type situation here. I'm going to take Dallas here +1 in a slighter upset from the other game. Give me Dallas here +1 and Dallas straight up. Then the next game, when the 3-10 New York Jets go to Jacksonville to take on the 3-10 Jacksonville Jaguars in a battle for the bottom. The New York Jets here are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me the New York Jets here -3.5 and the New York Jets straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-7 Miami Dolphins go to Houston to take on the 8-5 Houston Texans. The Houston Texans are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Houston here -3 and Houston straight up. Then the next game, when the 6-7 Indianapolis Colts go to Denver to take on the 8-5 Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are 3.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Denver here -3.5 and Denver straight up. Then the next game, in a Super Bowl 59 preview, or possible preview in my opinion, when the 11-2 Buffalo Bills go to Detroit to take on the 12-1 Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are 1.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Detroit here -1.5 and Detroit straight up. Then the next game, in the battle for the Keystone State, when the 10-3 Pittsburgh Steelers travel to Philadelphia to take on the 11-2 Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Philadelphia here straight up, but I'm going to take Pittsburgh +4.5. Then the next game, when the 3-10 New England Patriots go to Arizona to take on the 6-7 Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are 6-point favorites in this game. Give me New England here +6, but I'm going to take Arizona straight up. Then the next game, when the 7-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to Los Angeles to take on the 8-5 Los Angeles Chargers. Los Angeles Chargers are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me the Los Angeles Chargers here -3 and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. Then the next game, in the Sunday night game, when the 9-4 Green Bay Packers travel to Seattle to take on the 8-5 NFC West leading Seattle Seahawks. The Green Bay Packers are 3-point favorites in this game. Give me Green Bay here -3 and Green Bay straight up. Then the next game, when the 4-9 Chicago Bears travel to Minnesota to take on the 11-2 Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are 7-point favorites in this game. Give me Minnesota here -7 and Minnesota straight up. And lastly, in the other Monday night game in a doubleheader, when the 6-7 Atlanta Falcons go to Las Vegas to take on the 2-11 Las Vegas Raiders. The Atlanta Falcons are 4.5-point favorites in this game. Give me Atlanta here -4.5 and Atlanta straight up. All right, it's time for my quick thoughts on each game. The Los Angeles Rams over the San Francisco 49ers. This game to me is very interesting because I feel like with the Rams, they're coming off a tremendous high. Where when you look at the Rams, they played their best overall game against one of the top teams in the AFC. Went blow for blow with them in terms of scoring. They scored 44 points. They had a huge block from Hunter Long for a big touchdown. It's basically the deciding factor of the game. And when you look at what the Rams have offensively, I believe they have, in terms of talent, the best wide receiver duo in the National Football League in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Fun fact: when Cooper and Puka have both been healthy this year, they are 6-2 as a team. And I would argue, look, also Puka Nacua, he scored a rushing touchdown, which is important because that was the first rushing touchdown all year that was not scored by Kyren Williams, but Kyren Williams ended up getting another 2 touchdowns himself. And also, the play of Matt Stafford has been fantastic. He has, over the last 4 games, thrown for 10 TDs, no interceptions, and I really like what this Rams team is doing. They are playing solid, fundamental football. It's been consistent. And Sean McVay is having, a good year to where if the Rams can somehow get out of the West, and I believe right now, because I look at Seattle's schedule, I believe the Rams will win the West and get into the playoffs, and they might knock Seattle out of it just because Seattle's schedule was brutal at the end, with 2 of their next 2 games being against the toughest division of football, or the best division of football in the NFC North this year. Those fighting words everyone wants to disagree. I'd love to hear it, but I really like what this Rams team has done. And remember, this Rams team and Niner team, back when they played earlier in the year, that was about an even matchup when all the talent was gone. And the Niners somehow blew that game. The Brock Purdy played incredibly well in that scenario. And I know the Niners, usually with Kyle Shanahan, they usually win this game. But I don't know if Trent and Bosa are going to be back in this kind of moment. I just feel like with the Rams, they, I think, understand this is not a moment to where it was like the Lions or you've been on this massive win streak all year. The Rams know what's at stake here. They know how good they can be, and they know probably that no team in the NFC wants to play this offense fully healthy with the way they've been playing. And I just think for the Niners, the Rams offensive line, Rob Havenstein coming back has been tremendous to help improve the stability of that offensive line. I don't believe Bosa will play, so I don't believe that pass rush will be as effective. And I just trust Matt Stafford in this spot to play a solid game with a good, consistent run game that I just don't get with the Niners. I don't know if they can match it, if they're going to have to go to their 4th-string running back this week against this Rams team. Could the Niners win? Sure. Kyle Shanahan usually has Sean McVay's number in most situations, and the Niners, they're the more desperate team here. I feel like the Niners know that, they have that loss coming up against Detroit. They know that they have the Dolphins, the Cardinals, and them coming up in the Final 4. And they could win 3 of those 4 to maybe get in the playoffs if things shake out. But if you're telling me in this game between both teams, possibly 4th-string running back, Debo seems frustrated. And I just think if they double George Kittle and take him out of the offense, I don't know if the Niners can generate enough offense with their run game and their system to outpace a Rams team that has played incredibly consistent football, especially with their weapons being in full strength. So, should be a great game. I wouldn't be shocked if San Francisco won, and usually I always kind of get lucked into this pick because always I trust the Rams, and usually they let me down. And I like to, this might be the sideshow Bob moment for me stepping on the rig one more time. I'm going to take the Rams here, healthier, more consistent, and I just think again the Bears were a complete disaster for a rookie. This isn't a rookie. And I just feel like the Rams just played on a more consistent level. They'll be prepared for San Francisco. And I think the Rams just have a healthier, more consistent roster compared to the Niners at this point, which should win the game. So that's why I like the Los Angeles Rams here, plus 2.5, and Los Angeles Rams straight up. The next game, the Kansas City Chiefs over the Cleveland Browns. This game to me comes down to, look, the Kansas City Chiefs have won 15 straight one-score games. It's crazy. I honestly forgot that I thought they were the first team to win every home division game by the same score because they won last week on Black Friday with a 19-17 score when it came down to Jackson Powers-Johnson for the Raiders botching the snap that gave the Chiefs the fumble with the win. This one was a Matthew Wright game where he doinked it off the left upright and in. They also the first team in NFL history to have 3 different kickers kick game-winning field goals at the end of games in Butker, Spencer Schrader, and Matthew Wright, former Niner kicker. And I have to give the Chiefs this credit that, winning 15 straight one-score games, I know that, the argument is saying that, hey, they're like, if you put purple and gold on them and you gave Kirk, and you made Patrick into Kirk, nobody would believe in this team. But that's not the case. That's not reality. This team knows how to win close games, and you can't win 15 straight close games in one-score spots without having any bit of skill. They do not have a rabbit's foot shoved up their rear end so far it's going into their brain. They are great at this stuff, and this is why they are the two-time defending champions. Okay, and the Browns. Look, the Browns have had moments. Jameis is giving you the full Jameis in terms of incredible yards, incredible throws, good athleticism, cannon of an arm. But Jameis, for the last 4 games, I believe, has had 8 to 10 turnovers, which I believe is second in the league behind Kirk Cousins. Or he has the most turnovers of the last 4 weeks, and that's the problem with the Browns, is that, look, I know people can say, look, the Browns have a decent pass rush. That offensive line has been worked. DJ Humphries really couldn't change anything, and you could argue if they had Ladd McConkey and J.K. Dobbins, maybe the Chargers win that game. Who knows? But I'm taking the Chiefs here just in this spot of where, again, Jameis can play well. Jameis can have moments. Jameis beat the Ravens, a team that's significantly better, and the Steelers, his division rivals. 2 teams significantly better than their current team at home. So I could see the Browns, because the Chiefs have given every team essentially this kind of fight. The Browns could fight with the Chiefs. But at the end of the day, the 2 things I'm going to trust here is either Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to find a way to grind out a win, hopefully by a game-winning touchdown or the way to get the score at least by 5 points. Or the Browns are going to brownie themselves and continue to shove Brown all over their face, because it just seems like every time the Browns this year have had nice key moments or big spots, their kicker, Dustin Hopkins, is going through the Jake Elliott or Justin Tucker problem where he can't make kicks. Jameis throws horrible turnovers in key spots. They got drive stalled. They really couldn't run the ball. The Chiefs defense has been sensational against the run all year. And just when it comes down to it, if you're telling me, okay, can KC win by a score against this Browns team that's just, respectable, but at the end of the day, the Browns, I believe they can. The Chargers were different because I thought the Chargers were just much more talented. I thought this game, that game was going to come down to a game-winning field goal. But 4 points against Cleveland is a completely different story. But, we'll see here. I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think, look, the Chiefs have 2 big games coming up in the next couple days where they have the Texans and the Steelers coming up, 2 massive games on Saturday and Wednesday. That is a brutal stretch for a Saturday, Thursday turnaround, or Saturday, Wednesday turnaround. So I definitely know after the holidays they will be glad to have a break, but I think they get the nice, smooth win out of the way by beating the Brownies. So that's why Kansas City are -4 and Kansas City straight up. The next game, the Cincinnati Bengals over the Tennessee Titans. This one to me is essentially where you look at what the Bengals have done. Joe Burrow is the 3rd quarterback in NFL history to be leading the league in passing touchdowns on a losing team. I believe only Drew Brees and Joe Montana are the only 2 other quarterbacks that led the league in touchdown passes on a losing football team. And look, Jamar Chase has been sensational. 14 receptions. I think it tied a Monday Night Football record. Another 160-plus yards. He's been, statistically the best receiver in football. He's earned the $36 million paycheck that everybody thinks he's going to get. I thought the Bengals, they kind of had some moments where, they kind of bangled themselves or put themselves in tough spots. But also the Cowboys, fortunately, by their one special teams player muffing the ball, it gave the Bengals a massive opportunity to get the ball back, which led to the out route on the 3rd and 3, which gave Jamar Chase the 40-yard touchdown to win the game. And the Bengals, again, the Bengals have this historic offense, but this pathetic defense. And again, should the Bengals win out the rest of their games up to the Pittsburgh game? Yes. So if you could argue that point of, okay, if they beat Pittsburgh in a game that may not matter to the Steelers, but I would not want the Bengals in the playoffs, because at that point it's a brand new season. If you let the Bengals in the dance, Joe Burrow is the only guy active to beat Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game. So, when you look at the Bengals, they're playing well. They're holding it close. And Joe Burrow, Trey Hendrickson, and Jamar Chase should be lauded for what they've done. Chase Brown, also, by the way, has made Zach Moss irrelevant. Again, I know Zach got hurt with a neck injury, but I think that is a key point as well, in my opinion, to point out. But, when you look at the Titans here, it's very much like the same story of where the Titans, the Bengals are playing their former coordinator, so he knows them, they know him, so they know the style of offense that Callahan wants to run. And I just see with the Titans, they just put up 6 points against the Jags. Will Levis played a cleaner game than Mac Jones, but Mac Jones ended up winning because Tank Bigsby was able to get in the end zone. And I know the Titans defense, it's been underrated. It's been one of the better defenses, especially in the secondary wise, due to Denard Wilson for the whole year. But this is an offense that's just been unstoppable against every team. And I just think, again, the Bengals, the Titans, can they move the ball against this bad defense? Sure. Like, you have Calvin, you have Tony Pollard, who's gotten 100-plus scrimmage. Like, Tony Pollard's had an underrated year. You have Calvin. You have Westbrook-Akina, who's, has 8 receiving touchdowns. You have, Chig, who I like at tight end. Like, I look at the Bengals here, or I look at the Titans and go, okay, could the Titans move the ball? Sure. But the Bengals just have too much offensive firepower that I don't think this Titans defense can really hold up against. And I just think, again, the Bengals, if you're telling me Will Levis in a key spot going up against that Bengals defense, he'll make a mistake. He'll get sacked in the key spot. He'll make a tough overthrow that's not going to win the game. And Joe should be able to grind out or get a nice, comfortable, solid win. If they could beat the Cowboys by a 5-point margin, even though, again, it was they definitely could beat the Bengals with a point off in the spread. I just think they gave the Titans that because of the passing defense and how good the defense has been. I think the Bengals, with all their talent and the belief they have in Joe Burrow, that should guide them to a win over a respectable Titans defense, but a putrid Titans offense, which should be the difference in the game. But I do have to say this: Nick Folk will be better than Cade York in the kicking game. So, but that's all like Cincinnati here, -4.5 at Cincinnati straight up. The next game, the Washington Commanders over the New Orleans Saints. This one to me, it comes down to the New Orleans Saints got very fortunate that one of their big defensive tackles blocked a Graham Gano game-tying 35-yard field goal. It's crazy that Alvin Kamara leads the team in rushing and receiving yards because, and again, I know Chris Olave's out for the year. It's unfortunate, but now Derek Carr, after trying a dive, he fractured his hand, he has concussion, he's probably out for the rest of the year. That doesn't matter. So if you're going to tell me Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler in the dome, I feel like it's very interesting to me because Washington's coming off a bye. They played a very solid game against a respectable Titans defense. They're coming off a bye. I could see, and I need to see what Robert Griffin III did his rookie year, but I could see Jaden Daniels, I'm not Jalen Daniels, the quarterback out of Kansas, who's coming back for his senior year. Jaden Daniels, I think, could have a RG3 Week 1 2012 type game against this Saints team. Like, I don't think this Saints team is really going to be able to move the ball. You're telling me Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler is going... Because honestly, I would make the argument of the Saints. I'd put Taysom Hill at quarterback. If Derek Carr is out and your 3 quarterbacks are arguably Taysom Hill, Jake Haener, or Spencer Rattler, Taysom Hill has proven the most at quarterback. And I put him at a quarterback, but he blew his ACL out 2 weeks ago. So he's not in the question. And I just feel like for this team, like the Commanders going into that dome, like the Saints, played a admirable game, and they haven't been horrible under Darren, but this is just a matchup where the Commanders just have way too much talent. The quarterback gap is going to be significant. Terry McLaurin should have a field day. Marshawn Lattimore, hey, he'll get to play his former team. Maybe he'll actually be active, which would be kind of an appropriate or storybook way for Lattimore to start his Commander career by getting to play his former team in the Superdome. And I just feel like, again, the Commanders, like the Saints and Titans at this point, I think the Saints are a little bit better, but I'm like, with this current iteration, if it's Haener or Rattler, I expect the Commanders to easily get a nice 10 to 14-point win. I'm not going to make the same mistake I did with the Titans, trusting that Titans defense to be able to hold within a 5.5-point margin. I think the Commanders, with Robinson, with the rest of the team, should be able to go into New Orleans and march their way. They're going to come marching in with a rear end kicking and a hog whipping for the older Commander fans with their offensive line, and with Jaden Daniels being back home or being back in a familiar area around LSU to win this game. Should be a great game. I'm excited. We're giving the Commanders here better coach, better roster, much better at quarterback, and just in a completely different vibe compared to the Saints at this point. So that's all. Like Washington here -7.5 and Washington straight up. The next game, the Baltimore Ravens over the New York Giants. This to me, the Giants are the worst team in the NFC. I would argue they're the second worst team in the NFL behind the Las Vegas Raiders. The Giants are just essentially trying to get through the end here. Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Trace are probably the only bright spots of the team right now. The offensive lines have banged up. I believe they lost John Runyon and another tackle to a neck injury. Tommy DeVito is still not being healthy to play. And I think the Giants are just trying to get through the end of this year. The Ravens, look. Also, I think here is the other one key thing for Raven fans that they'll greatly appreciate from this statistic here. This is a revenge game for Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson has lost only 2 games against the NFC throughout his entire career. One was 2 weeks ago against the Philadelphia Eagles, and the other one was back in 2022 when the Giants won 24-20 in New York against the Ravens. Fun fact, though, Saquon Barkley is the only man in the NFL that could say he went undefeated against Lamar Jackson throughout his career so far. So, fun fact. But, again, this game for a matchup-wise, the Giants are too banged up. The Giants really have no talent. The Ravens should go in there and steamroll them, just based off, our running game and how we usually play off of buys. John Harbaugh is very good at preparing his team. But the key thing of this one is 15 points, and maybe I'm hoping that the Ravens pull what the Lions did with the Jags and the Lions did with the Titans. But I just can't, through their history, with their performances against the Raiders and Browns on the road, or with the Raiders and Browns, the Raiders being at home, I just can't trust the Giant or the Ravens to cover a 15-point spread. That's a massive number, and do I think the Ravens are at least 2 to 3 touchdowns better than the Giants at this point? I do. I just think for the Ravens, it's just too big of a spread, and I can't take 15 points with the utmost confidence. Yeah, like I said, if you're doing a confidence pick and pull, like I am, like put 16 points on this game, I'm going to be absolutely stunned the Giants beat the Ravens in this current spot, especially coming off the bye. But I think the Ravens, get a nice, comfortable win. They get to 9-5, and then they have a huge game against Pittsburgh coming up on the 21st in a basically division-sealing game, in my opinion, next week. So this game is going to be incredibly boring. Probably the most lopsided game of the weekend. Give me the Ravens here just for all the reasons everybody knows. Derrick Henry, Lamar coming off a bye, the revenge of the end of beating the Giants, and the Giants just being an absolute train wreck. But take the Giants plus 15 because I think the Giants, weirdly enough, maybe with what could happen, could hang it around within that 2-score margin. And if I'm wrong, I'll be happy, but, 15 is just way too many points to take a risk on that one. So that's like Baltimore here straight up, the New York Giants plus 15. The next game, the Dallas Cowboys over the Carolina Panthers. This one, to me, comes down to I'm going to trust the Cowboys, and I know it's going to be very hard for people to believe after what happened just yesterday. I'm going to trust the Cowboys to get a win in a tight, close game against the Carolina Panthers. Look, Carolina over the last 4 weeks is 500. Bryce Young has 7 total touchdowns, 4 TDs, 2 picks, or 7-4. Like, he's played the best month of football I've seen from him as a pro. And I think for the Panthers, also, again, don't want to be the ultimate hater, but Jonathan Brooks, the great running back out of Texas, is a bust. B-U-S-T, bust. That bum of a player with his knees, he is never going to be the same. He is never going to be the same. The man could only last, about 2 quarters, and he tore his ACL. I don't know if it was the same exact knee, but that bum of a player is a bust, and the Panthers really need to think about probably releasing him or looking at that second-round draft pick and saying, we made a massive mistake in putting a second-round pick in Jonathan Brooks. And thank goodness now, because I had questions about the Chuba Hubbard signing. That Chuba Hubbard signing now looks golden. Because now, Jonathan Brooks, I wouldn't even give you half a nickel for the guy. Because what has he done? Like, he was great at college. He's basically been on the Toy Story Woody shelf all his career so far. I wish him well, but I definitely think the Panthers, if they go into after next year, they really need to think about either releasing him or think about trading him for half a cent on the dollar. Because for his career to be, this bad through at least the first 2 years, it's not great. And to get a second-round pick, I know the injuries, he can't control that, but it's a really bad spot. Also, I do have to say, Adam Thielen had a fantastic game. That was kind of a weird revival in that regard, to see that. But again, like, when it comes down to the Panthers, like, in the last 4 games, they've been great, spread picks. that essentially, every time you pick them to at least cover, they've been able to cover spreads. But in their last 4 games, they've won by 1 score, 1 point, and then 2 field goal, or arguably, 3, game-winning drives, two field goals, one by Schrader and one by McLaughlin for the Bucks, and then they came down to a 4th and whatever, and they couldn't get that due to big play Darius Slay. And and it's one of those where when you look at the Cowboys and the Panthers, could the Cowboys blow this game? Sure. But also the one weird thing about the Cowboys throughout most of the year has been they have been a much better road team, weirdly, than a home team. I believe they haven't won they've won 1 home game all year. They've had the most home losses in one single season since the 2015 season. So, I look at this Cowboys-Panthers game, and would I be surprised if Carolina won? No. You're playing to a backup quarterback. Zach Martin's out for the year. This Cowboy team is just trying to get to the end. But I think CD should have a phenomenal game, and I think Cooper Rush has played admirable football. He played the Bengals pretty much nip and tuck, and essentially if that one Cowboy special teamer doesn't blow that play, they probably win that game, and the Cowboys probably steal a win that they didn't deserve, and the Bengals keep going on their spiral. And just in this kind of spot, you're telling me Cooper Rush, Bryce Young. I'll take Cooper Rush to outplay Bryce Young by a little bit, and I'll take the Cowboys with their defensive talent to grind out a win. It's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things, and the Panthers, you could argue, are kind of in a good spot to get another great talent. But I will say this. Bryce Young, he needs to win one of these games. Because I know the Panthers aren't getting Shedeur Sanders, but if Bryce Young, and I was somebody that defended Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud when the draft started 2 seasons ago, if he does not win one of these final 4 games, I am up to drafting Cam Ward. Bryce Young needs to seal a deal and prove that he can win at least 3 games in this league. And if he can't win one of these games, I'm not here for these pretty losses. Okay? And I think it would be a mistake for the Panthers if Bryce cannot win one more game. And he's shown for you a month now, he's gotten to that spot. But he's proven again and again and again and again that he can't, in these moments, or this is the first time on his end, he might not be able to get the job done. And I need him to get the job done for me to believe that the Panthers do not need to draft a Cam Ward out of Miami. Because I would definitely consider it if Bryce does not win. Because you can't just have 2 wins. You can't have 3 wins in 2 years. And even with the improvement that you've seen out of Bryce, you can't just go and say, Bryce is our unquestioned starter. I just can't see it. So, should be a great game. Wouldn't be surprised if all Carolina won. Give me the Cowboys here, a little bit better talent around the ends. And I think Cooper outplays Bryce by a little bit. And I think the Cowboys take a win that will make them feel, it'll be an empty win. It'll make them feel okay, but it won't really move the needle in terms of their overall aspirations for the rest of the year. So, that's all like Dallas here, +1 and Dallas straight up. The next game, the New York Jets over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm taking the Jets here because Aaron Rodgers. The Jaguars are the worst, one of the worst teams in the league. They won because the Titans' offense could not do anything. Tank Bigsby scored about 4 minutes to go, and the Jags' defense held. Mac Jones threw 2 horrible interceptions. Aaron Rodgers, for the most part, in a game that they needed, he finally threw it for 300-plus yards. First time in about, 35 games that he threw it for 300 yards. And it just comes down to, you look at the Jets roster, you look at the Jags roster, even with 2 equally bad teams with 3 wins, the Jets just have such more significant talent that I don't think the Jets can louse this up. With the Dolphins, the Seahawks, are all these more competent teams that have better coaching, better situational football. You even saw it on Sunday, the way they ended that game against the Dolphins. They basically blew that through bad situational football. But again, with the Jags, I just think the Jets just have too much talent that even if the Jags, and with Mac Jones playing, Aaron Rodgers, I think, could play at 45%, and he could beat Mac Jones with how bad Mac Jones has been throughout the year outside of the Texans game. And I think the Jets, just for talent alone, even with Jeff Ulbrich there, they should be able to beat up a putrid Jags team to get a win that for Jet fans they probably aren't happy about because they're both eliminated from the postseason. But it's where I think the Jets are just a little, they just have much more talent. I think in 2 weeks, the Raiders play the Jags in the worst game of the year. And in that one, that is essentially where I would want a 0-0 tie. and we could argue we could see that, but if you just wanted a spoiler or a little bit of a sneak peek, I'd probably go with the Jags because I would trust Mac Jones maybe to outplay Aiden O'Connell. Maybe, but we'll see. But Jets here, much more talent. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think, can louse this game up. I think the Jets defense should be able to feast over what the remainder of the Jags have, and I think the Jets win in a pretty easy way in a really bad game. So that's like the New York Jets here, minus 3.5, the New York Jets straight up. The next game, the Houston Texans over the Miami Dolphins. I am taking the Houston Texans here based on their defense. I believe the Houston Texans here, coming off a bye, they should get Joe Mixon healthy, Nico Collins, and this Dolphins defense. I think Stroud can make some plays with Dalton Schultz, with Steens or Stover, the other tight end, Kate Stover. I like him at tight end. Joe Mixon should be able to run pretty well. I think the Texans' defensive line should be able to get through the Miami offensive line, especially with Teron Armstead having a back injury. He's not going to be 100%. And I trust what the Texans have from what I've seen out of D'Amico, two former Niner guys, and D'Amico and McDaniel going back at it one-on-one. And it's just, again, where, like, when you see that, even though, again, this game is in Houston, so they don't have to worry about the cold, and it's technically an indoor stadium, I just trust that the Texans, with their defensive line and their secondary, should be able to make enough plays against Tua that they should be able to grind out this win. And I also think with how Dolphins' run defense has been at time, I think Joe Mixon should have a very solid and consistent game. If you're telling me who will outplay the other quarterback, even though Tua has played very good, high-quality football, it's been against a bunch of tomato cans. This Texan team is not a tomato can. They're not nearly as good as I thought they would be. But I'm going to take the Texans here. Home field advantage. More dominant defensive line. And in a battle of what quarterback do I think wins this game, I will take Stroud over Tua in this very tight and possibly playoff-ending game for the Dolphins in Houston on Sunday. So that's like Houston here, minus 3, and Houston straight up. The next game, the Denver Broncos over the Indianapolis Colts. This is a battle of two bye teams coming off the bye. I'm going to take Denver here just because I've seen Denver in key spots. They have done very well with sacks. They've done very well with turnovers. And I will still continue to believe that Anthony Richardson is not a quarterback. Richardson got lucky because the Pats don't have nearly as much talent. Bo Nix is about 50 to 60 times better than the other quarterback on the other side. They should be able to run the ball a little more effectively, and I just trust Denver's defense with Pat Surtain to lock down Pittman or Downs. I think Pierce is going to be an interesting one with his speed. He does lead the league in terms of yards per reception, which is crazy. But I'm taking the Broncos here. Better running game, better coach team, better quarterback, more polished, and I trust the Broncos to grind out a win and have a much better defense to stop the Richardson-type run in effect compared to the Colts. Can the Colts compete? Sure. You have Jonathan Taylor. You have a really stout, impressive running game. But John Payton usually is pretty good off a bye, and Steichen, I think he understands where they are. They're still kind of in the division race. They're kind of fighting for it. But I just think, again, the Broncos have the better quarterback. They have the better defensive line, the better secondary, and I just trust the coaching in that regard with Sean Payton, with how Bo Nix has played. Bo Nix, had his worst game probably not 2 months. But that's not usually how Bo Nix has played throughout most of the year. He's played pretty much consistent, on-time football, and with the Colts secondary having a couple injuries, I believe, to one of their key players, I think the Broncos defense and team should be able to get a good 7 to 10 point win against a awkward Colts team that really needs to figure out what they want to do at quarterback, because I just don't think Anthony Richardson's the answer. Again, he has got 4 more games this year to kind of prove it, but from what I've seen, it's been way more bad than any good, or it's been way more bad that can't outdo any of the good stuff that you've seen from him over the last several games. So that's like Denver here, minus 3.5, and Denver straight up. The next game, the Detroit Lions over the Buffalo Bills. This game comes down to me, home field advantage, and I trust the Lions coach. I trust Campbell over McDermott. Everything you could say about these two teams, both quality defenses, both high-quality quarterbacks, both good running games, both pretty much one dominant receiver, and then, kind of burning, a deep threat. These teams are very similar in kind of maybe their construction. But, in moments like this, though, when it comes down to it, comes down to just a couple factors for me. I trust the Lions in key spots. I trust that the Lions defense will be able to make a few more plays because in the game against the Packers, in the games against the Bears, in the tight moments, Dan Campbell was able to make, those coordinators and players were able to make the right calls in key spots to get them wins. But, for me, would I be surprised if Buffalo won this game? Not at all. Buffalo is a very good team. And I think if you look at this game, the Chiefs and the Eagles are going to be watching this game like a hawk because they know what's at stake if either team loses. If the Lions lose, the Eagles and the Vikings in a regard now put themselves in a spot to where that Week 18 game, Vikings at Lions, is probably going to be the Sunday Night Football game because that probably is going to determine the NFC North winner, which is going to be massive for the Lions and Vikings because you could argue that could go from being the 1 seed to the 5 seed, and the Lions are the 5 seed. That's a way different road and battle than what they were going to be if they were the number 1 overall seed. And for the Bills, if they lose, they're pretty much gifting the Chiefs the number 1 seed with 3 games to go and about a 3-game lead. So essentially all the Chiefs would need to do is beat the Texans on the 21st, and it makes the Christmas Day and January, the other Sunday game, completely irrelevant in the conversation. I think, again, this is going to be a all-time, one of the games of the year. This is going to be on the Chiefs-Ravens, Eagles-Ravens, Rams-Bills. It's going to be this kind of level game. And look, the last time Buffalo played, in a spot like this, it didn't turn out well. And the Bills are 2-3 against winning football teams. And there's just a part of me saying, if you're telling me in this moment what coach and what staff is going to make the right decision, I'm going to trust the Lions with their decision makers and Dan Campbell over Sean McDermott in this key spot. Because in the Bills' losses, Sean McDermott has made some very questionable decisions that has caused me to think, okay, I don't know if you can trust Sean McDermott in a tight, close game. They can pretty much, hit a good Mike Tyson right hook on a knockout against most teams, but so can the Lions. But I've seen the Lions grind out tight game after tight game over the last few weeks that I just haven't seen from the Bills that often. Should be a phenomenal game. I am very eager to watch this game, and I think it's going to be one of the games of the year, if not a Super Bowl preview. But in this spot, give me the Lions. Better coached, better situationally, and I trust that the Lions defense will make one more stop compared to Buffalo's. So that's Detroit are -1.5, and Detroit straight up. The next game, the Philadelphia Eagles over the Pittsburgh Steelers. This one, to me, comes down to the update from Mike Tomlin that George Pickens, he had an MRI on his hamstring, and that hamstring injury is more significant than they thought, and he is now, on Tuesday, mind you, as well, on Tuesday listed as doubtful for the game. That will essentially be the reason why I think the Eagles will win. Because you're telling me George Pickens, the Steelers' best offensive skill position player, is off the team, and you watch them against the Browns, even though the Browns, again, kind of kept browning themselves with turnovers and missed kicks. The Eagles do have a kicking problem, just like a lot of teams have. Jake Elliott has missed a lot of big 50-plus yard field goals, which I think is a problem. But, in this game, I think Philadelphia, with their run game and with, the idea with their... I think this Philadelphia defense will be able to get to Russell Wilson. I think this Philadelphia defense can limit Najee and Jalen enough that Russ is going to have to be more reliant on his arm and his offense. And I just think with the limited weapons that they have, of how dominant that secondary has been with Darius, with Quinion, with Cooper, with possibly Reed, even though I know Reed was out last week with a concussion. With this secondary, I think this Eagles team should be able to win the game. However, with all the strife that's gone on over the last, 48 hours, if you watch any of the national media, any of the hot take shows, or listen to any WIP local radio, I do think it will be a distraction. I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting disrespected on the spread. I think, a 4.5 point spread against an Eagles team that I think the Steelers have played pretty much good complementary football, and also the Eagles are just slow with first quarter starts. I think they've only scored 2 touchdowns the entire year through the first quarter. Jalen has not been passing it very well, as A.J. Brown is obviously now everybody knows, routinely mentioned on a consistent basis. And I think the Steelers, they have too much pride. The Steelers have not won in Philadelphia going on nearly 60 years. It's been 59 years since the Philadelphia Eagles since the Pittsburgh Steelers went across the state in the Keystone State Battle and gone into Philadelphia and won. But in this spot, I'm going to take the Eagles here because of that defense. And I just think, again, even though I know Russ is 6-0 all time against the Eagles, he's never lost. He's been like LeVar Ball, never lost against the Philadelphia Eagles, which is true. I just think the Eagles, with that defense and without GP, I think the Steelers stand no chance to win. I think the Steelers can make it a 3 or 4 point game because Chris Boswell can make kicks that Jake Elliott or Justin Tucker could not. That will keep the margin close within that 4 point range. But at the end of the day, I think the Eagles, with their running game and with their new maybe motivation, should be able to beat a Steeler team that will give them a great fight. But I think Philadelphia just has a better secondary and just a better team overall in a lot of key spots. So that's like Philadelphia here straight up, and Pittsburgh plus 4.5. The next game, the Arizona Cardinals over the New England Patriots. This one to me comes down to Arizona. They haven't been bad, but they've been Arizona. And what it continues to show is that Arizona, once you get around late November, they start to crumble. Fortunately, I believe they play the Pats and the Panthers the next 2 weeks, so those are 2 games they should be able to win based off their talent and their consistency. James Conner's played well, Trey McBride, Kyler, that defense had some key moments. Also, just think the Pats offense, they just waived KJ Osborne for no reason or for some odd reason. And I think the Cardinals at home have routinely played, better in consistent ways. They blew out the Jets pretty decisively. They ended up beating the Dolphins by a point, and those 2 teams are better than this Patriot team. But I'm going to take the Patriots plus 6 here because I think the Pats, for the most part, besides the Miami game, they haven't played, bad as of late, and I think the Pats could hang around with Drake May's athleticism, with Ramondre Stevenson running the ball. I think they can hang around and make the game a respectable game in that regard to cover within the 6 points. Would I be surprised if New England won? Yeah, a bit. I think New England, their main focus has been Drake May's continued consistency of playing solid football. And I think he will play another solid game, but when you just look at the Cardinals, just dominant running game, really good defense over the last several weeks, and I just think Drake May is going to be in for a very long day out in the desert. Though, again, it's a desert, so maybe a lot of Pats fans out in that part of the country will go out there. That's like going to Glendale, enjoy the Grand Canyon, enjoy that area. And so I do think there will be a lot of good Pats fans out there, or more Pats fans than you would think in Arizona, but I think the Cardinals are just much more better team across most phases, and I just think the Cardinals get this win pretty comfortably in terms of straight up sense. So that's like Arizona here straight up, but New England plus 6. The next game, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This game to me comes down to, I believe that the Chargers defense, Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh, will be better than the Bucs defense, Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield. That's what it comes down to. I could argue the Bucs, they're healthier, they've been playing more consistently, and there is a part of me, because I took the Bucs to win the South, and I've not been a big Atlanta supporter, and I will get to them in a second in the next few games. I do think that the Bucs can win this game, but if you're just telling me in the key areas of a lot of the other things being the same, it's not the receiving core. I think the Chargers defense and Bucs defense can kind of match up evenly. I think Jesse Minter's done a better job than what the Bucs defensive coordinator has done. I believe that's Todd Still, or that could be Casey Rogers. I could be wrong. And it just, to me, I think Lab McConkey should be back. It'll give them a huge boost offensively, which what they need. And in this spot, I'm going to take the Chargers based off better coach, better better quarterback, and a better defense, better defensive performance, especially for Antoine Winfield being out for a few more weeks with another hamstring injury. He's been he's probably their best defensive back. And I just think the Chargers offensive line should be able to hold up enough and grind out a win. Would I be surprised if Tampa won? No, and like I said, I'm kind of rooting for it to basically seal that Tampa Bay will win the NFC South after the Falcons choke the 2 or 3 game lead. But the Chargers, I feel like, are the better team, better situationally, better in the moment. And I think the Bucs, it's going to make that NFC South race very tight at the end because I think both these teams are going to be basically fighting for essentially an even spot. It's going to come down to basically the Falcons-Commanders game in Week 17. If the Falcons win that game, the Falcons are in. If the Commanders win, the Bucs are in. in my regard. So, but that's why I like the Los Angeles Chargers here -3 and the Los Angeles Chargers straight up. The next game, the Green Bay Packers over the Seattle Seahawks. Better run game. The Seahawks against better opponents have had tough moments. They got blown up by Buffalo at home. Stafford won a game in overtime there. Trying to remember some of the other Seattle home games this year. The Niners played pretty well. I think the Packers have been better than those teams. Jordan Love has played routinely well over the last few weeks. Josh Jacobs is running the ball sensationally. The Packers defense leads the league in forcing turnovers. Geno, against some of the better opponents this year, has shown to have a turnover propensity, a high turnover propensity, which is going to be a problem. And I just feel like, again, like if you're telling me Matt LaFleur and Mike McDonald in the spot against a high quality team, I'm going to take Jordan over Geno. Give me Jacobs over the combo of Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. Even though Kenneth Walker is supposed to play, so maybe Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet could do a bit of a combo well together. Hopefully they maybe get Romeo Doubs back, and I just feel like the Packers just have better consistency of like what they need to do, how they play, and Jordan Love is just playing at a higher level than I've seen on Geno, who hasn't played horribly, but Geno just has a ceiling that I think Jordan can kind of outdo in this type of game, which will be the difference. Even though, again, in the kicking battle is about the same with Myers and McManus, two solid veteran kickers. But, in this spot, the Seahawks have always had a little bit tougher time against quality opponents at home. I think the Seahawks have a bit of a fight, but the Packers in this spot, coming off a tough loss to Detroit, now having to go back on the road and go out to the West Coast to play the Hawks at night, which would be a huge atmosphere. I think the Packers grind out and get a tough, gritty win over a respectable Seahawks team, which opens the door for the Rams in the West to make that Rams-Seahawks game maybe the other NFC or the Rams-Seahawks game, if that's the Week 18 game, the other big Sunday night finale possibility. So, but that's like Green Bay here -3 and Green Bay straight up. Then the final two games, the Minnesota Vikings over the Chicago Bears. Minnesota, Sam Darnold, 5 TDs, 6 incompletions, has been sensational, having the best year of his career. Sam Darnold is actually having a higher yards per pass than Matt Stafford did with Kevin O'Connell in 2021. The Vikings defense has been sensational. Will Reichard's back at kicker. Like, this Vikings team, just hands down, fundamentally, I would argue, is clearly the third best team in the NFC. I love Flores as a defensive coordinator. He's done a fantastic job. I am open for giving him another coaching job. I just think he needs to learn how to treat a young quarterback. I think that's going to be the only problem. So I heard the report the other day about, Flores being on the Bears job. If I am the Bears, absolutely not. I'm not bringing him Ryan Flores. He ruined Tua's confidence. I would hope maybe he learned, but you don't know. But I think he would ruin Caleb's even more just because of the attitude. But, and it just, when you look at the Bears and Vikings, like this game just a couple weeks ago, it was a competitive game back and forth. And could the Bears, play effectively or be within that spot? Sure. But I just think the Vikings, with their defense, they're going to get to Caleb a lot more times at home. Darnold should be able to dissect and carve up a Bears defense that just routinely over the last couple weeks, they can't get anything going offensively or great starts. I think they said like the Niners had about 300 yards of total offense in the first half. The Bears had 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 total yards of offense in a half. That is dreadful. That is absolutely anemic. That will not get you anywhere. And I just think, again, the Vikings know, especially if they know that the Lions lost the previous day, they know now that essentially that Week 18 game, Vikings and Lions, will be for the NFC North, and I think the Vikings feel confident that they can go into Detroit with their talent, with their roster, and play a competitive game, if not win the NFC North, and shock the NFL world by getting the Lions into a wild card spot at the 5 spot, which would be insane. But this game, Vikings just have better defensive talent, better roster construction, more motivation, and I just think the Bears they're trying, and Caleb's had moments, but they're just not ready for this spot in prime time. So that's why I like Minnesota here -7 and Minnesota straight up. And lastly, the Falcons over the Raiders. This is not me giving an endorsement of the Falcons at all, because Kirk Cousins over the last 4 games, no TDs, 8 interceptions. Through 2012 to 2013, I think they said he only had like 10 games to where he didn't throw a touchdown over like 160 game span. And a 13 games sample this year for the Falcons, he's already gone 5 games, 5 out of 13, without throwing a touchdown. Back-to-back weeks for the first time in his career. It has been god-awful, but the Raiders, if there was one thing worse than Kirk Cousins' play, and shout out to the football guru, one of our progs, big Raider fan. Sorry, buddy, but the Raiders are worse than Kirk Cousins at this point. The Raiders really only had Brock Bowers, who did break Sam Laporta's rookie record for receptions by a tight end in his rookie season. Job well done to him. I think the Falcons' defense should be able to run the ball effectively well with Bijan and Tyler Algier. I think Kirk Cousins should throw very minimally. I think the Falcons need to take a lesson from the Eagles and make Kirk throw it 10 to 20 times a game at this point because of how turnover-prone he's been. And I just think the Falcons, again, in a Raider stadium that has no home field advantage, the Falcons, just based off their defensive talent and talent alone, with Kirk being there, should be able to get a nice, easy win against a poor Raiders team. It's not an endorsement of Atlanta of how far I think they can go. It's more of an indictment on how bad the Raiders have been, that you can just look at these two teams. And even with how bad Kirk Cousins has played through this entire 4-game stretch, I think he's played a little bit better than in more games than not, he's played better than what the Raiders quarterback has shown throughout the year. If you're going to tell me which game would I watch Chicago, Minnesota. I'm going to watch both because I'm a fanatic and I'm a little bit nuts. But I think Atlanta, with their run game and their defense against a very porous Raider team, double or triple team Brock Bowers, make Aiden or Desmond Ridder try to throw anybody else. Also, the Falcons be motivated for the Desmond Ridder revenge game. And I think the Falcons just grind out a win to stop the bleeding and get prepared for another cupcake game against the Giants the following week. So that's why I like Atlanta here, -4.5, and Atlanta straight up. So those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Please check out the NFL YouTube Prognosticators page as well. Check out other great prognosticators like Andrew Warren, Gio Knows and his radio show, Half Moon's Picks, Fire and Brim Sports, Sports Fan Entertainment, Top Sports, all those guys and gals that make predictions like I do every week. Please check them out. They are all great listens. Bridgewater's finest. They are all great listens and views. They all are entertaining in their own way. And I did want to say that next week I will be doing my video next Monday. I am off Monday, so I will be doing a video next Monday. And then after that, I don't know what my schedule is for the holiday, but my plan would be to do my video either probably on Christmas Eve sometime. Hopefully, or Christmas Eve, or at the very latest early Christmas morning before the game. So those are my picks for this week. Like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Good luck to all players, coaches, teams, fellow prognosticators, and fantasy football players. I am in a playoff in one of my 4 leagues. The other 3, I'm in a consolation bracket, or I don't even want to talk about the other 2. That's how bad a fantasy year I've had. But that is it. So until next week for my Week 16 predictions, good luck to everyone. And this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Until then, everyone, so long.